Bertrand Russell, 1872 to 1970, was not merely a thinker. He was a force of reason, a challenger of orthodoxy, and a fearless public intellectual. One of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, Russell shaped modern logic, laid the foundations for analytic philosophy, and wielded his pen against the two most enduring and divisive forces in human history, organized religion and war. With incisive logic and a deep moral conviction, he pushed boundaries not only in academia, but in the public square, defying authority and stirring global debate on issues of belief, morality, and justice. Born into the British aristocracy as the grandson of a former Prime Minister, Lord John Russell, Bertrand's early life seemed destined for privilege. But fate intervened. By the age of 4, he had lost both parents and was raised by his strict and deeply religious grandmother. The young Russell's home was dominated by Victorian moralism and Christian doctrine, which planted the seeds of his later rebellion. Despite the constraints, Russell's intellectual talents flourished. Educated privately, he showed a precocious aptitude for mathematics and logic. These interests led him to Trinity College, Cambridge, in 1890, one of the most esteemed academic institutions in the world. At Cambridge, Russell met Alfred North Whitehead, with whom he would co-author the Principia Mathematica, 1910-1913, a 3-volume attempt to derive all of mathematics from logical axioms. This Herculean work helped define mathematical logic and influenced generations of philosophers, computer scientists, and logicians. But Russell's ambitions extended far beyond the ivory tower. While he had a passion for abstract reasoning, he was equally concerned with how ideas could shape and liberate human lives. Russell's skepticism about religion was not rooted in bitterness or trauma, but in a relentless demand for evidence and coherence. In 1927, he delivered one of his most famous public lectures, later published as Why I Am Not a Christian. In it, he systematically dismantled classical arguments for the existence of God, including the first cause argument. Russell argued that if everything must have a cause, then God must too. If God can be uncaused, so can the universe. The argument from design. He rejected the notion that the universe's complexity necessitated a designer, pointing instead to evolution and the problem of suffering. Moral arguments. He believed that grounding ethics in divine command made morality arbitrary and undermined human responsibility. Russell did not merely find religious claims unconvincing, he found them dangerous. He saw organized religion as a tool for social control, intellectual suppression, and moral hypocrisy. He cited the Church's role in perpetuating ignorance, repressing sexual freedom, and justifying violence. Religion is based, I think, primarily and mainly upon fear. It is partly the terror of the unknown. Bertrand Russell. He advocated instead for a secular ethic based on human empathy, reason, and the promotion of human flourishing. Principles that aligned with Enlightenment values and anticipated modern secular humanism. During World War I, as nationalistic fervour swept Britain, Russell took an unpopular stance. He opposed the war. He believed the war was being fought not for liberty or justice, but for imperial ambitions and economic interests. As a result of his activism, he lost his post at Cambridge and was later jailed for 6 months for encouraging resistance to conscription. Despite public scorn, Russell remained steadfast. His pacifism wasn't a passive ideology, it was an active commitment to peace, even when it was personally and professionally costly. During the interwar years, Russell remained politically active. Although he saw the rise of fascism as a threat to human civilization, he never lost sight of the broader dangers of militarism and authoritarianism, whether from the right or the left. He was briefly sympathetic to socialism, but after visiting the Soviet Union in 1920, he became a sharp critic of Bolshevism, recognizing in Stalinist communism the same dogmatism and cruelty he had condemned in religion. In the aftermath of World War II and the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Russell turned his attention to the existential threat of nuclear weapons. In 1955, he co-authored the Russell-Einstein Manifesto, urging global cooperation and disarmament. The manifesto declared, "Remember your humanity and forget the rest." This call catalyzed the Pugwash Conferences, a series of international meetings between scientists and world leaders that earned the 1995 Nobel Peace Prize. Even in his 80s and 90s, Russell remained active in political protests. He founded the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament and the Bertrand Russell Peace Foundation. He led sit-ins, wrote manifestos, and even allowed himself to be arrested to draw attention to the dangers of nuclear proliferation. Notably, in 1961, at age 89, he was jailed for a week for breach of peace during a nuclear disarmament protest. His refusal to go quietly into retirement made him a symbol of moral courage for a generation of activists. Russell's contributions to philosophy include the development of logical atomism, the theory of definite descriptions, influencing linguistic analysis, early critiques of idealism, helping steer British philosophy toward empiricism and science. His writing was remarkably clear and accessible, rare in an age of academic obscurantism. He once said, "Everything is vague to a degree you do not realize till you have tried to make it precise." Russell was also a social reformer who championed education reform, advocating for critical thinking and freedom in schools, sexual liberation, defending birth control, and critiquing Victorian morality. Freedom of speech, fighting censorship, and intellectual repression. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1950 in recognition of his varied and significant writings in which he champions humanitarian ideals and freedom of thought. Bertrand Russell's life was a model of intellectual independence and moral integrity. He was a man who challenged the gods of tradition and the Goliaths of war, not out of rebellion for its own sake, but because he believed that reason, compassion, and truth should guide human action. Russell's insistence on questioning sacred beliefs, be they theological or political, remains a beacon for anyone who values critical thinking and moral courage. His voice still resonates in debates on religion, education, civil liberties, and international peace. In a world grappling with fanaticism, violence, and misinformation, the life and legacy of Bertrand Russell remind us that sometimes the philosopher must also be the warrior, armed not with weapons, but with the sword of reason and the shield of conscience. The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people so full of doubts. Bertrand Russell.